You see this face, right? And you probably think of one thing. A kind, gentle, white-suited grandpa who just loved making fried chicken. But let me tell you, the real man behind that logo, well, he's one of the most fascinating, contradictory, and just plain stubborn figures in all of business history.
For decades, this has been the image we've all known. It's a symbol of comfort food, of Southern charm. And, it's a pretty carefully crafted myth. The real story isn't some easy, down-home success tale. No, it's a story that's really defined by failure. And by one absolutely staggering number.
1009. Just let that sink in. That's how many times Harland Sanders was told no when he was trying to sell his chicken recipe. And here's the crazy part. That wasn't even the beginning of his struggles. Not by a long shot. To really get who the Colonel was, you have to go back and look at the lifetime of failure that forged. Yeah, long before he was ever a colonel, Harland Sanders was basically a master of losing jobs, failing at businesses, and frankly getting into fights. His life before chicken was a masterclass in what not to do.
I mean, his trouble started so early. His father died when he was just 5 years old, and almost overnight, Harland became the main caregiver for his younger siblings. By age 7, he was the family cook, not for fun, but out of total necessity. School just wasn't in the cards. He dropped out in 7th grade and basically hit the road, starting this decades-long journey through dozens and dozens of jobs.
The chaos of his early career is it's kind of amazing to look at. He was a railroad fireman, got fired for fighting. He gave being a lawyer a shot. That ended after a brawl in the courtroom with his own client. He sold insurance, fired for insubordination. He even started a lamp manufacturing company that went completely bust. You start to see a clear pattern here, right? Conflict, bad luck, and a total inability to work for anybody else.
So at age 40, smack in the middle of the Great Depression, Sanders finally stumbles into the one thing that would change absolutely everything. In a tiny little gas station in Corbin, Kentucky, he found his true calling. And, well, it involved a lot more than just cooking. His road to success was anything but peaceful. He started out just serving meals to travelers from his own dining room table. But then a rivalry over some advertising signs got so out of hand that it turned into a literal gunfight, and a man was killed. With his rival now in prison, his competition was, well, it was gone. This unbelievably violent episode, combined with his growing reputation for great food, led to him being named an honorary Kentucky colonel, right before a technical breakthrough changed the game forever.
And this is where you can really see the spark of genius. See, pan-frying chicken back then took about 35 minutes, way too long for hungry travelers on the go. So Sanders gets his hands on a new invention, the pressure cooker, and he tinkers with it, modifying it into a pressure fryer. This one move slashed the cooking time down to just 9 minutes, all while keeping the chicken perfectly moist. This single innovation is what made fast food chicken even possible.
So Sanders had finally built a successful, popular restaurant. But then, in his 60s, an age when most people are thinking about kicking back and retiring, a new threat came along that forced him to start all over again completely from scratch. That threat was the new Interstate 75. The government planned for it to bypass his town of Corbin entirely. His whole business, which was built on highway traffic, was about to become a ghost town. Facing total ruin, he sold his restaurant at a loss and made one last desperate pivot. So at 62 years old, living off a measly $105 a month Social Security check, he throws his pressure cooker and his secret blend of spices into the back of his car and just starts driving. His plan was brutally simple and just grueling. Go from one restaurant to the next, cook for the owners right there on the spot, and if they liked it, they'd shake on it. He'd get a nickel royalty for every chicken they sold using his recipe. And he just heard no, over and over and over again. Sleeping in his car most nights, he was rejected 1,009 times. Can you just imagine the sheer, stubborn tenacity it took to keep going after the 100th no, or the 500th, or the 1,000th? It is almost unbelievable. But eventually, he got a yes. And what's so incredible here is that some of the most iconic parts of the entire KFC brand didn't even come from Sanders himself. It was his very first franchisee, a guy named Pete Harmon, who came up with the name Kentucky Fried Chicken, the slogan finger-lickin' good, and even that famous bucket. Sanders had the recipe, but Harmon, he had the marketing genius. By 1964, there were over 600 KFC locations. The business was just exploding. And at 73 years old,
It was way too much for Sanders to handle on his own. So he sold the company for $2 million. And you think, okay, this is where the story ends. He gets a well-deserved retirement? You would be very, very wrong.
You see, the sale came with one big condition. Harland Sanders had to remain the face of the company, a paid brand ambassador for life. And this one decision would lead to one of the absolute strangest conflicts in corporate history, the founder basically declaring war on his own empire.
As the new corporation started focusing on cutting costs and maximizing profits, Sanders was absolutely horrified by what was happening to his food. He was especially furious about what they did to his gravy recipe, publicly calling it slop, and saying, and this is a direct quote, that it ain't fit for my dogs.
He became this kind of rogue quality inspector. He would just show up at KFC's totally unannounced and loudly tear into the staff if the food wasn't up to his standards. He famously told one reporter that the new gravy was like wallpaper paste.
I mean, just think about how completely bizarre this was. The man they were paying to be their friendly, smiling logo was traveling the country telling anyone who would listen how terrible the food had become. It was a total PR nightmare that led to multiple lawsuits. He was suing the company he created, and they were suing him right back. But through all that fighting, all that anger, Sanders was building another, much quieter legacy. His lifelong struggle had given him a really unique perspective on money and success.
This quote right here, it just perfectly captures his whole philosophy. After a lifetime of having practically nothing, he had zero interest in hoarding his wealth. Instead, he started giving it away almost as fast as it came in. And we're talking about millions. He funded hospitals, he supported churches, and he gave to countless charities. This is a side of Colonel Sanders almost nobody knows, that the angry perfectionist founder was also an incredibly generous philanthropist.
So when you look back at his entire crazy life, the failures, the gunfight, the 1009 rejections, and the war against his own company, you just have to ask yourself, was the secret to his success really those 11 herbs and spices? Or was the relentless, stubborn, and often cranky grit of a man who simply refused to fail?